There are major changes to the NXT creative process to tell you about today. Plus, an NXT star made a return and turned babyface in the process. Plus, another major talent could be missing WrestleMania 38. It's all in the wrestling news right now. We have seen a raft of changes to NXT over the past few months. Last week we saw seismic changes to behind the scenes, and it continues today, not with releases, but certainly a logistical change to NXT. PW Insider reporting the following. Going forward, the NXT creative team will not be operating independently. Under the Paul Levesque regime, the NXT creative team had been autonomous in nature, operating as a separate bubble within the company. As part of the changes made last week that unraveled that era of NXT with WWE cutting the majority of the team Levesque had assembled over the years while building the NXT brand, that will no longer be the case, at least short term. PWInsider.com has learned that NXT creative team has been informed that from now they will fall under the purview of Bruce Pritchard and Christine Lebrano, directly reporting and answering to them, consistent to how Raw and SmackDown creative teams each operate. The days of NXT being a separate little pocket within WWE look to be over. This kind of feels like the final piece, really, to the change to NXT, doesn't it, Andrew?
It really does, yeah. It very much seems like now it's going in a direction similar to that of Raw and SmackDown. And I mean, We'll see how it goes. I think a lot of us have been quite skeptical about this, you know, and part of that is rightly so as well, because of how successful NXT was when it was under Paul Triple H's banner and everything, and his creative team. We'll see what happens. Very much a lot more character develops. They are obviously pushing their own stars now. And let's not. I mean, this is very much the early days of the new era of NXT. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, at least anyway. But yeah, it's very different now from how it once was.
Here's the thing with it all, and as you say, rightly so, it is very different to how it was. And now it's not a super indie. Like now, it's taking away the like looking at this with my head and not my heart. This is now what NXT was always meant to be, a development territory designed to create characters and stories that can progress onto Raw and SmackDown. So by having the writers and the creative for Raw and SmackDown overseeing NXT, we aren't going to see many more of those blundered call-ups. Like the way that it ran, it was like NXT. Towards the end, NXT and WWE became like oil and water. And that isn't the relationship that you want for a developmental territory, which is what NXT was always supposed to be. So now they're in a system whereby people who are within NXT, they can be confident in the knowledge that they're getting appropriately primed for a debut on Raw and a debut on SmackDown, with the writing team overseeing their progress. You know, a guy like Bron Breakker, you know, he's always the go-to example, but I think now there's many others in amongst there as well who I think are going to be just fine when the time comes for them to get called up. Is it the super indie that we all fell in love with? No, absolutely not. It's not. I think AEW is sort of more befitting of that super indie title than NXT. You know, I think a lot of people would say that AEW is kind of what NXT was. The parts of the NXT that we liked, certainly in terms of the roster, if nothing else. But now NXT 2.0 is what NXT 2.0 kind of always should have been. Some interesting things to note about the team behind the scenes on this. So PW Insider said there's a change to the creative department in NXT, as well as being overseen by Pritchard and Lebrano. Johnny Russo will be heading up the NXT writing team. He is no relation. We did see a pole match on NXT last night, but that is just a quinky dink. I promise you.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Also, Anthony Golden Jr. Will stay on NXT Creative. He joined back in March of last year. He's got a theatrical background, and he brings that to it. And also, Dewey Foley stays on the team. And I think to a lot of people, it'd be surprising to learn that Dewey Foley is part of WWE Creative. He was working primarily on 205 Live and has been moved over to focus more on NXT Creative going forward. So a few movings and shakings behind the scenes at NXT that will lead to probably an easier process for people getting called up, I would say. On NXT last night, we saw a return of an absent star, didn't we, Andrew?
We did, yeah. So LA Knight came back. Obviously, AJ Styles and Grayson Waller had a match last night. Styles defeated Waller, and then he brought out a friend, which was the returning LA Knight. We haven't seen him since War Games, and he's back, and he seems to be babyface now too, which is a big surprise. I thought, he's a perfect fit for an arrogant heel, but he's a big old babyface now. Gave
Waller a big old beating at the end of the night, and they did a nice bit with AJ when the cameras, I say the cameras were off. It's on YouTube, so it's that weird sort of oxymoron. The fact that it's like how AEW has a show called Dark. Well, it's clearly not Dark, yeah. But you get it. Like after the cameras went off air, take a look on the YouTube channel. AJ kind of hands the reins of NXT over to LA Knight, like a bit of a passing torch thing there, which suggests that LA Knight is going to be top tier babyface on NXT 2.0 going forword, which I'm all right with.
Yeah.
Karen Q got back in the ring. So, I mean, if you haven't been paying attention to this, so that wonderful TN Char storyline is just disappeared. And I was sad about that because I thought it was some of the more compelling stuff that NXT had done in its previous incarnation. Mei Ying saw Xia Li go off to SmackDown, Boa go soloer, and Mei Ying didn't have much to do, so disappeared. And then we started seeing Karen Q back on NXT television, like asleep, like in a onesie, sleeping in the crowd, sleeping in the locker room. She woke up last night and teamed with Indy Hartwell and Persia Pirotta to face Caden Carter and Casey Catanzaro and Amari Miller. So Karen Q, what a those memes online, those tweets online that you see, Andrew, which is how it started, how it's going.
Yeah.
There isn't a more appropriate one.
I don't think there is. It's such a huge departure, isn't it, from what she once was. But do you know what? I actually really do quite like this new character. I like this. It's just the complete opposite. And her sort of just like how lax she is, how relaxed and just like carefree she seems to be at the moment. You put on a really good showing in the match as well. Like, she's got a lot of potential, I think. And I think with this character-based NXT now, I think she fits in really, really well.
So you could see her doing big things then? Do you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon so. I reckon so. With as with a lot of people now in NXT, as you were saying before, I guess now with the changes, this does give the creative team are able to hone what they want from a superstar now, and then when they do go up to the main roster, as you were saying, there's not that awkward transition period where they try and change someone so much, So I think there's definitely a lot of potential.
Is there potential to see John Cena at WrestleMania this year, Andrew?
Well, let me tell you, they could be highly unlikely. So
whatever
John Cena,
happens, we won't see him.
We won't see him anyway. Exactly, he's just invisible no matter what he does. John Cena on Ellen DeGeneres' show on the media tour for Peacemaker, he was speaking about WrestleMania. He said WrestleMania is usually in the cusp of late March, early April. I don't know if I'm going to make it this year. That's a good conundrum to have because there's a lot of good opportunities coming up, which I would love to take. If all those things line up, I don't know if I'll be able to make WrestleMania. I will tell everybody watching, I'm not done with WWE by a long shot. That's my home. I love it. I was able to go back during summer for a few months and entertain audiences when they welcomed audiences back to arenas, and I far from had my last performance.
So John Cena facing what I like to call a champagne problem. Either he's going to be too busy doing movies or he's going to rock up at WrestleMania in some capacity. I think. Do you know what? Do we think Would we like to see John Cena at WrestleMania, first of all? I think there's got to be something for him to do if he wanted to do something.
I mean, it's kind of become sort of a staple now to have either like John Cena or Undertaker or someone turn up at WrestleMania, right? And sometimes it's sad when we don't see that, because it is nice to see them in some capacity. I wouldn't mind seeing him. I wouldn't mind seeing him doing like a little short segment or something. Obviously, don't detract too much from all the other people that will be putting on fantastic matches throughout the weekend. But yeah, I mean, Cena very much feels like how Randy Orton feels like to me now. Obviously, Orton's still actively wrestling and everything, but John Cena is having the time of his life, I think, at the moment. And it's nice to see him come back and just enjoy himself, you know? And yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Cena at all.
Yeah, let us know down below if you'd like to see John Cena at WrestleMania this year. And until we speak again with more news, keys.
Love you, bye.